in the celebration of the International Society of Quality of Life Studies. And today we are with Mariano Rojas, one of the pioneers in the study of subjective well-being, particularly in Latin America. I am Lina Martinez. I don't know if recent classifies nowadays, but I have been in the field of subjective well-being studies. Mariano has been a mentor, an inspiration of my work. I have been the privilege of working with him. So today we are going to have a short interview to know how Mariano ended up doing studies of quality of life in Latin America, the impact of the work and the trajectory he has had in the society. So Mariano, welcome. Thank you very much for this time. And let's start with an introduction of yourself. Please tell us a little bit of your trajectory and how you ended up doing subjective well-being studies.
Well, very glad. Thank you, Lina, to be here and to talk with me for a while. And I would like to also express my gratitude to Jill. She's been doing a great job at the society. And I'm very glad to be here. 30 years is a lot. And I've been like 25 years with the society. And I know that the trajectory has been difficult. There has been difficult times. But now I think we are in a very good moment, in good shape, and we have to celebrate these 30 years. I'm an economist by training, but like Dick Sterling says, I'm a reluctant economist. I always thought that economics is very limited to understand human beings, and that utility should be understood in terms of happiness, And so I studied economics, I did a lot of mathematics, but I wanted to know more about human beings, concrete human beings of flesh and blood, human beings, and not really the consumer and producer units that you see in textbooks, but real human beings, I was never happy with economic theory and how they portray economic agents. And it happened that by casualty, I got a paper on happiness and health. And what surprised me, that was, I think, in 1996, what surprised me was that they were doing empirical research on happiness, And that's how I got into this. I said, this is interesting. There was a student who wanted to do a dissertation on something eclectic, something different. And then she got into this topic, and that's how we started doing subjective well-being. And I remember we prepared a paper that was maybe 1998, 1999, and we submitted that paper to a conference in Girona. And that was ISQOLS conference in 2000. And that was my first experience going to a conference of ISQOLS. I was young, I was new, everything was fresh, fresh knowledge, and I felt great being in that conference. That was organized by Ferran Casas, and I met a lot of nice people who's been my friends for 25 years. So that's how I got into ISQOLS and into subjective well-being.
And what about the story of you getting to the subjective well-being research in Latin America? We know when we do different research, pretty much the information that we have about subjective well-being comes from Huron, from developed countries who had very great information and databases for doing the studies, particularly from the angle of the quantitative studies. And you have been a pioneer in Latin America. Probably you have been a while doing research in Latin America, but still today, it is a very narrow field with very few people working on it. How was the introduction? How you ended up doing research in the region?
First of all, we faced a major problem that there was no data sets at the moment. You ask people, look, can you introduce a question in your survey about subjective well-being, about whether people are satisfied with life or not? It was very difficult, but we got a grant, and then they told me that I got the grant because they said this is something different. Let's give him some money and let's see what happens. So I got a grant and we ran a survey. I was an economist at the time, an orthodox economist doing banking. My PhD was in banking. And so I was working in banking consulting, and everything was about money and loans. And I ran this survey about happiness, and I ran a regression to see what was the relationship between income and happiness, and life satisfaction. And coming from the banking sector, I said, well, I expect a very strong correlation. I expect income to explain maybe 90% of people's happiness. And I got 4%. That was my major shock, major surprise. Income is explaining only 4% of the variability in life satisfaction. For somebody who is used to work in banking, for somebody who is teaching students about the budget constraint and the importance of income, that was shocking, And I said, well, what else can you get from that data? Why income is not so important as we economists believe it is, and that's the beginning of my research trajectory, trying to understand what explains happiness. But then we got something else very interesting. Then we started getting these surveys, the World Value Survey. The World Value Survey does not have many Latin American countries, but there are some countries there, Mexico and others. And we got also the Gallup survey in 2007. The Gallup survey asked the life satisfaction question. And the surprise was that Latin Americans are reporting very high happiness levels. And in the Gallup survey, Costa Rica was the happiest country in the world. It happens I'm from Costa Rica. I know Costa Rica quite well. Mexico is also a very happy country. I've been working in Mexico for many years. So this was shocking, not only for me, but for the rest of the community in the quality of life research area. And also for economists and everybody else that believes that it should be the developed countries should be the happiest. And Latin America happens to be a very happy region, according to this data. And that opens a major question, why these mid-income, low-income countries with high income inequality, with high income poverty, what is happening there that people are so happy? And well, the answer first is that there is more to life than money. Not everything is about money in life. And you realize that there are countries with a lot of money, but they are not happy. And that was the beginning of like a major search. What explains happiness in Latin America? And I think that Latin Americans are well positioned. If you grow up in Latin America, if you are familiar with the culture, you are familiar with Latin Americans because you are one of them, you are in a better position to understand the factors that explain happiness there. So that's my research. What explains happiness in Latin America, but also what lessons the rest of the world can get from that research. I don't think this is local research. This is research that can contribute to the rest of the world.
Okay. I want to give a little bit the direction of this conversation about the role of ISQOLS on getting people together in a subject that is a kind of a silo in the research, especially from economics. And I'm going to give, I don't know, Mariano, if I've ever told you this, but before going to ISQOLS in 2016, 2017, I can remember, I was doing a literature review for one paper and I came across your work. So I read one paper and then I found out you have, I don't know, 100, 200 papers, book chapters. And I really like the approach of reading someone who is very academic, but gives some soul to whatever they are writing. And the perspective and the inclusion of literature, of different references of what life is worth living. And I remember emailing you before the conference. We met in ISQOL, and I was pretty new in the area, and since then I have been the privilege of being somehow close to your work, and more recently working together in different projects. And so that's the beauty of the ISQO community. You get people together. This is an area in which not many people is interested or working, but it's growing. And can you explain us a little bit of, tell us your side of the story of how eSchool has helped to spread the research and the word about the relevance of studying happiness and the importance of studying happiness in terms of a broader perspective for thinking public policy, for instance, which is one of the areas in which you are concentrated in your research work?
Yeah, well, I think ISQOLS is the major academic society for this kind of subjective well-being, quality of life, happiness research. It's a society, but it is also a family, at least for me. I have very good friends. I've seen some that come, some are gone, no, and that's part of life. But those are really family for me. I was very glad the first time I went to a conference. That was in 2000. And then I've been in many conferences, many places. And I go because I learned something, but also because I need the hugs of these people. No, I need to hug people. I need to see my old friends. I see, very glad to see younger people coming to the society that's renovating, and they are coming enthusiastically. And I think that ISQOLS is like a good place, not only for conferences, but also a lot of other services, that webinars, access to information. Of course, in the academic sector, it's very important to have connections, to spend your sabbatical in one place or another, to talk, to do all joint work. And ISQOLS provides that infrastructure. At least for me, I am who I am, and I do what I do thanks to ISQOLS and thanks to a lot of people who've been very helpful. That's also very interesting, because you get there and you have this feeling of people being receptive. No, they accept you. And for me, let me tell you something. In 2000, in 1998, when we were starting doing happiness, my economic colleagues were completely against the topic. No, they rejected. Economists did not believe in subjective evaluations of life, and that was very difficult at the moment. No, to say, look, I'm doing happiness, and then you find a place where you go and you find a lot of people who say, no, this is important, and they open your scope because it's completely interdisciplinary. You get in contact with psychologists, sociologists, anthropologists, and then you realize that you are studying real human beings, no? And you say, well, maybe the problem is with economists, no? That they keep going with the research on consumers, and what is important, and this is important nowadays in the world, is to understand the well-being of persons, not the well-being of consumers and producers. And I think that's also a very important mission of ISQOLS, to show that we need interdisciplinary research, that we need subjective information, and that this research can make an impact in the decades, in the future, for coming decades.
Okay. And finally, for someone who has the breadth of knowledge, the knowledge base that you have on subjective well-being, the field is evolving, it's more interdisciplinary. Every year you see more things, analyzing from different aspects. at this moment, what is the new trend, or what did you see the frontier that has liked you the most, or you are thinking it would be worth going in that direction in the future years of the research objective?
Let me provide a little of history, about in order to answer that. I think there has been some stages. There were some pioneer work in the 1970s, 1980s. We have the work of Dick Easterlin, the work of Bernard van Praag, Ed Diener, Ruth Benhoven. They were doing research in the 70s, 80s on happiness, but that was like some papers here and there. I think the first stage in this process was positioning the topic in the academic arena, making this topic an academic topic. In the late 1990s, people did not believe, economists did not believe, not even sociologists, they did not believe in subjective well-being, and it was very difficult. So I think in the late 1990s, the first decade of the new century, what happened was that this topic became an academic topic. That was very difficult, because you face rejection everywhere. And of course, the Journal of Happiness and the applied research in quality of life, that helps. But then there was a second stage, and that was also very difficult, and that was convincing national statistical offices that this was useful to measure, and that there was useful information. And that happened at the end of the first decade of the century. That was in 2008, 2009. There were meetings, and we convinced national statistical offices about the importance of measuring happiness. The OECD played a very important role with the guidelines to measure subjective well-being. Now you have the topic was already positioned. I know some people are reluctant to accept subjective well-being, but they say, okay, a lot of economists, a lot of psychologists are doing that. That's one track, and they accept that. Now we have databases, national statistical offices are measuring that. And then when you talk about research using that information, everybody will have to accept that, well, it comes from the National Statistical Office, there may be some value there, The third stage is moving to policy, to change the conditions. Now we have research, now we have data, now we need to generate change. And I think we are in a very good moment because the paradigm of progress as economic growth is really exhausted. We cannot go on growing forever. There is no well-being behind that growth. And also we are having a negative impact on the environment and on the well-being of future generations. So now our major task is to move to policy. I don't mean that everybody in the society has to move to policy. We need to go on doing research. We need to go on questioning measurement techniques and so on. But that research needs to move to policy, and that's the major task now. The major task is, from my perspective, to provide some advice on a paradigm shift. What kind of society we want 3-4 decades from now? What kind of society we want at the end of the century? And how can we emphasize some aspects in life that are environmentally friendly, that do not depend on income or economic growth, and that contribute a lot to subjective well-being, to people being satisfied with life. And that's where I think Latin America has a lot to offer, because Latin Americans manage to be very happy with an environmental footprint that is very low, and with a mid-income level. And that shows the rest of the world, and especially the Western countries that are polluting the the environment, it shows that the Western world that it's possible to have a better life at a lower cost for the next generations and to enjoy more life. And not everything is about increasing income. So that's, I think, research from Latin America can move to policy. That's my recommendation, at least for younger scholars. Think about the impact of your research. You research, publish papers, go up, climb the academic ladder, but think about the impact in the long run of this research in the world.
Okay, Mariano, so I hope this short video can make justice to all your contribution you have done to this field, to the society, and thank you very much for taking the time, for being here, and for all the people who is watching. Thank you for your time. My pleasure,
Lina, and thank you for asking me these questions and allow me to share my views and my trajectory with people in the society.